Kulis, and I'm an attorney in the city of Chicago and have been an attorney for approximately 18 years. You contacted me because you saw an advertisement that I run in probably some local newspaper talking about police misconduct. A good portion of my practice is in the area of police misconduct. For a number of years, when I first became a lawyer, I worked for the city of Chicago defending Chicago police officers. At that point in time and in my career, I learned about the Civil Rights Act and what the Civil Rights Act meant. It basically means that everyone has the same rights under the law, and if police or some government agency abuses those rights, an individual citizen has a right to bring a cause of action. For about approximately 6 years, I represented Chicago police officers, and then I went to a small firm. In 1990, I started my own firm, which is currently Gregory, Kulis and Associates. A good portion of our practice is representing citizens in the community in the Chicagoland area, the city of Chicago, and the surrounding suburbs regarding civil rights violations. Over the past several years, let me explain, it is not that hard to file a civil rights action. I think in the past several years, the price originally was about $120 to file a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. People look at the United States District Court as being somewhat of a temple as opposed to the Daily Center, where most of the lawsuits are held, or are filed rather. But the cost has increased to only $150 for any citizen to go into the federal court and file a civil rights action. We represent a lot of individuals who are falsely arrested, accused of crimes, or are abused by use of excessive force by law enforcement officials. We have a lot of different cases in the Chicagoland area. What I've learned over a number of years is that people, I think, have become more conservative in their views. I think years ago, probably in the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s, people knew that police brutality existed, but it was, and when a case was highlighted, I think juries in general were a little more generous in their verdicts. I think over time, based on the good economic situation that we've had over a number of years in this country, and in general, people have become much more conservative. In fact, now, if you file a civil rights action in the United States District Court, I think the most recent statistic was that almost 90% of the cases against law enforcement that go to trial are actually won by law enforcement. Because in general, people like to do the safe thing. If they're on the fence, they will side on behalf of the law enforcement. They like to believe, I always say that people like to believe that we give badges to the good guys. We don't give badges to the bad guys. I've learned over a number of years that that's not always the case. My job in this area of practice that I have is to show a jury, excuse me, and a judge that a citizen's rights were violated. Either they were falsely arrested or abused in some manner. We've been quite successful in our cases, and from an individual standpoint, I get a very, very great sense of satisfaction to really, truly vindicate someone when I feel that they're right. Whether their Fourth Amendment rights were violated in any fashion, I feel like for once someone is standing up for them. Because very often the people we represent, and this is not always the case, but very often the people we represent come from a lower economic strata. They can't afford to go to a lawyer and say, here's thousands of dollars, go represent me. We take these cases on a contingency basis, which means we take a percentage of whatever we collect. So we have, I don't want to say a partnership arrangement, but we want to make money for them so we can prevail. Very often, however, we take a case and spend numerous hours, and when you divide our hours into the money that we collect, it is much less than we probably could make doing some other cases or other areas of the law. Sometimes it can be quite lucrative, especially if we go to trial and we prevail, because under the statute we are entitled to all our fees and costs for prevailing in the case. But as I was alluding to, the greatest satisfaction I probably have as a lawyer in this community is going to bat for someone who truly believes that they've been wronged and is willing to go to trial, and we do prevail. Years ago I had a case with a gentleman, and the day before we were going to give closing arguments, he said to me, or I said to him, that they've got some witnesses who may be lying, and there's a good possibility we could lose, but we're going to give it our best shot. My opposing counsel had come to me and offered a nominal settlement to end the case. And my client said to me, he said, "Greg, I've come this far and I truly believe in the system." And what happened was we went to the jury, we gave our closing arguments, and the jury believed our client. In fact, it gave an award in excess of what I even asked for. It wasn't a huge award, but it was in excess of what I asked for. And at that point I realized that sometimes that we as lawyers are not just doing it for the money, we're doing it for the right reasons. And this gentleman's rights were vindicated. I find that in a lot of cases where I resolve a case either through settlement or a trial, and when my client does get paid, he or she is truly grateful. They look at me as like, there's someone really standing up for my rights. And they remember me. I still get cards and Christmas cards. I just got a call. In fact, today is December 20th. I got a call. Today's December 19th. I got a call yesterday from someone who I hadn't heard from in probably a year. I represented this young man 10 years ago. I think I represented him once after that. I've done some things for his family, but I haven't heard from him for a year. He called me up just to say Merry Christmas. From Michigan. He said he was now living in Michigan, and he saw my card and some of his paperwork, and he wanted to call me and just see how I was doing and wish me a Merry Christmas. That short phone call just again made me confirm the fact that some of the things I do as a lawyer are really good. We as lawyers are all trying to make money, trying to better our lives, but sometimes it's not always the money that's the best thing. We're not always just chasing a dollar. I've learned I was born and raised in the city of Chicago, and I've seen how the city's developed. I think it has gotten better. We still have some problems out there with law enforcement, and that's kind of what I'm speaking of today. But I think overall the city has made some strides, and the surrounding communities have made some strides to better law enforcement, to make sure that law enforcement doesn't take advantage of the disadvantaged. Over the years, more and more departments have gone to college-educated or partial college-educated police force. There's been more testing done with some officers to make sure that they're the type of people that can handle the stress on the street. And I think it's a stressful job. I've taught or lectured at the police academy on a few occasions, and I've got to know a lot of police officers. And from a police officer's perspective, one police officer once told me, "Where could I get a job getting paid this type of money to drive around in the car looking out the window?" And that's how he looked at his job. I've talked to other police officers who say, "Greg, every time I go out there, my life's in jeopardy." He works in a different area of the city of Chicago, and looks at his job a little differently. But I think overall the police department in the Chicagoland area has gotten a little better. Citizens are more apt to step forward and cooperate with investigations when years ago they probably wouldn't. It kind of hurts my area of practice of law because I think police departments don't abuse people as much as they used to. But it's still out there. And the prejudices that police officers have, that government agencies have, or government officials have, sometimes they can't hide it. I mentioned to you, Linda, we've got a case right now where we're representing a Muslim organization who tried to purchase an existing church in a community on the southwest suburb. got a lot of resistance from purchasing this property. What occurred was ultimately we filed a lawsuit against the municipality and its city council for certain religious prejudices that we don't like to think we still have. But in looking at some of the transcripts or some of the questions that were raised with the Muslim's real estate lawyer when he went to a city council meeting or an open meeting, they were asking him, where is your organization getting their money to buy this? And I found that as being just amazing, because we wouldn't ask somebody from the Catholic Church or a Jewish community, where is your group getting their money? Yet the prejudices that certain people have came out. In fact, somebody actually commented, and this being in the year 2000, somebody said, well, you worship on Saturday or Friday, whatever, so you don't worship, the comment was, you don't worship on Sunday like the rest, like everyone else does, so you probably are different. And again, I found that it's just being so absurd that someone would still be able to have those prejudices and be able to stand up and voice those prejudices with a straight face. That struck me as just being that kind of kind of saddened me, because I like to think that people, if they have certain prejudices, they can recognize them and try and quash them. But in this instance, it was impossible, because the Muslim community was going to build a mosque in a community. And these people obviously, at least from my point of view, didn't want the Muslims in their community. And we filed a lawsuit which is currently pending. Where it goes, we'll see. But I think, one of the things you asked me is how has things changed over a number of years. You still have the bad apples. I don't think you have as many bad apples as you used to. Again, I'm speaking about law enforcement. There has to be better guidelines and more effort to get rid of the bad apples. Because what I find traditionally is that the police department who I sue, the Chicago Police Department and other police departments in the surrounding communities, it's the good old boy network. If you got yourself in trouble, don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. Lie. We'll take care of you. We'll cover it up. We'll get you out of this. If you worked in a corporation and screwed up, because they're in a corporation, it's driven by profits. If you screw up, you're gone. Traditionally, in law enforcement, at least, I don't think that that's been the case. You're a police officer. You're a guy you're another person with a badge. You're one of us. We're going to protect you, whatever it takes. And the bad apple, a lot of bad apples are allowed to remain within the department, and therefore kind of spreads to other members. Well, he got away with that, and I can get away with that. I think there has to be more strides to get rid of that. I think there's been some efforts within certain departments to get rid of that, but I think there needs to be a lot more effort to do that. Cut.
Do you want me to turn this off?
Yeah, just turn it off. Hey, thanks for letting me take that call. One of the things that I agreed, one of the reasons I agreed to do this is because this is about the city of Chicago. I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. I'm currently 44 years old. I have lived in the city other than when I went to college for 4 years out of state. But I've lived in the city my whole life, other than now about 2.5, 3 years ago I moved out to a northern suburb. And the reason I moved out to a northern suburb is because I had children. And I think times have changed. Well, I grew up on an area of the city of Chicago, since it's giving me the archives, is around 22nd in California, which is approximately 4 blocks or 5 blocks from Cook County Jail. Now, I occasionally, as a lawyer, have to go down to Cook County Jail to see some indigent clients that are either falsely accused or something, or in Cook County Jail, or take depositions down in Cook County Jail. And I drive by the boulevard where I used to play softball when I was 10 years old. And it's funny to think, here I am, 44 years old, going down, and I remember when I was a little kid, we used to go along the side of the Cook County Jail, and we used to yell at the prisoners, and the prisoners used to yell out the window at us.
What would you yell?
They'd yell something, and we'd yell back or something, and what are you doing? What are you in for? Or they'd swear at us, and we'd swear back when we were younger. And I don't think we really had a long dialogue with anyone, but occasionally we would we'd ask, "What are you in for?" Or, somebody would say, "Will you call my mother for me?" or something. And here I am now, and actually not too long ago I was walking actually in the prison yard, going from one building to another, and all of a sudden someone yelled out the window to me, and it brought back a memory of me as a little boy having conversation with someone. But in this case, the person who was yelling out said, "Hey, Greg Kulis." And it was somebody who I had represented in the past, who was housed in one cell block and happened to be at the window, saw me walking through the yard, and started screaming my name. But it brought, again, me back to when I was a little boy, having these detainees scream at myself and my friends when we would just be walking down the street.
So beyond screaming as a little boy, what was it like growing up in the neighborhood with the jail?
Well, the jail was like this separate complex that was, close to us, but really had nothing to do with it. The criminal court building was there, and as a little boy, we didn't hang out at the court building. There was a long boulevard in California. Now nobody could play softball because they planted a lot of trees, but we used to play because there was not a lot of park really that close to us, and that was the closest large field that we can play in. But it was the community I grew up in was a great community. It was primarily Eastern European, Polish, Lithuanian. I'm Polish descent. My name is Lithuanian. My grandparents came from Poland. My parents were born here. In fact, I was born and raised about 10 blocks from where my dad was raised. And that's the reason we stayed in that community. It was a great area. I grew up with a lot of interesting people. I'm curious to see where a lot of them are now. Basically blue-collar neighborhood, middle-class neighborhood. The neighborhood when I started to grow up was changing. It was becoming more and more Hispanic. So a larger Hispanic community was coming in. And it was funny, so now I deal as a... Excuse me, Queen. Yeah. Well, hi. Go ahead. Go ahead. But I'm gonna call you home later. Okay. The van. Tell James that I personally want to thank him, and I told him. Just tell him that on the side, or I'll tell him too. Okay. Don't worry about it. I'll meet you here. No, you listen, if you have to call me again in 5 minutes, call me again, you know that. Probably within half an hour. Okay. Okay. Bye. Oh, turning that second. I forgot what I was saying.
How your neighborhood was changing, the one you grew up in?
Yeah, it was changing, and here I am as an attorney representing people that are being accused of racial prejudice because they're law enforcement. Yet I remember as a little kid calling young Hispanics spics. I probably used the N-word.
What is the N-word?
Nigger. When I would see people. In fact, I remember there was actually a march one time not too far from, about 2 blocks from my house. I think they were probably coming from the Cook County Jail area, kind of marched through my neighborhood of blacks, and I saw a bunch of police. And I remember some comments from the neighbors, what are these niggers doing and marching through our neighborhood. I remember people talking about the spics coming into our neighborhood. And the area that I grew up in was, as I indicated, was Eastern European, and just east of us was Western Avenue. And on the other side of Western Avenue, just east of Western Avenue, was an area called Oakley Street, which has been and still is an Italian neighborhood. And the Italians lived just east of Western. Eastern Europeans lived west of Western. And it was traditionally a border. And on occasion we would go in there, and we weren't gangs or anything, we would go across the area because we had some friends over there, some girls or something we knew. And occasionally there would be some words shouted between a group of Italian guys and a group of us. And, you know, you wops or you Polacks, they would call us. I'm thinking, God, now here I am as a lawyer fighting all that, which is kind of weird. I mean, I've even had, a case or two that kind of came out of my neighborhood. I mean, I've had cases against the county jail where actually somebody died in county jail and was buried under an alias under paupers, in a pauper's grave. And I'm traveling back and forth and I'm dealing with county jail and I'm thinking, God, this happened in like 4 blocks from where I was born. And here I am on South Street, downtown Chicago, the bastion of the legal community, legal and financial community. And here I am sitting on the 21st floor in, a messy but pretty nice office overlooking the city of Chicago. And I'm thinking, God, I've come a long way from 22nd in California, where I grew up. But what strikes me as funny is I'm dealing with some of the issues that I probably dealt with as a little kid. Probably in my mind I'm thinking, God, that's not right, because my mother used to teach me you can't call people bad names. And yet, we all did as little kids. And now I'm dealing with stuff, and I'm fighting people that actually act under prejudices. So I'm kind of proud of where I came up from, where I came from, because it was such a great community. And that's what I really think that the city lacks to a certain degree now. There's all this gentrification and new areas and new places and new new buildings going up in different areas of the city of Chicago. Wicker Park, Lincoln Park, Old Irving, Andersonville. But what I think is missing today is the community spirit that we had. You lived in a neighborhood. You didn't live like you lived in a certain area of the city of Chicago, but you lived in a neighborhood. If this was your neighborhood, you knew who lived 2 doors away from you, 3 doors away from you, 6 houses away from you. Now, in the city of Chicago, I think there's less and less of that. People are live their own lives. They don't live in the neighborhood. They're not with mass transit and the transportation system, which is improved, and everybody having a car. In fact, when I grew up, we didn't even have a car initially when I was a young boy. People go out of their community more. They don't stay within their, quote, their neighborhood. I think that was really important, and I think the neighborhood spirit was great. The city of Chicago in certain areas, especially in the new up-and-coming areas, it's becoming more like suburban America, where you don't know. You may know the names of the people 3 or 4 doors away, but you don't know them always. Certain areas, with the block I live on, I'm lucky enough to live on a block in a northern suburb, where we've got to know some families. But literally, there's some families 3, 4 houses away. They may wave to me. I couldn't tell you their names, and I lived there 3 years. because I don't see them walking down the street to the bus stop, or you don't intermingle with the people as much as you did in your quote neighborhood. And it was great because, you know, if my mom needed to go somewhere, she can call 6 people on the block saying, listen, will you keep an eye on Greg because I have to do this, I have to do that. It's hard to put this into words, but I think having a community neighborhood or having a neighborhood community is valuable because it gives you a sense of belonging. It gives you an extended family, someone that you can count on. My neighbor, I used to call, and I still do at 44 years old, used to call her Aunt Helen. She's no relation to me at all, but she was like an aunt. She was our neighbor. She was there when I was born. She was there when I became a young boy and a young man. She is still my Aunt Helen because it's an extended family in your neighborhood. I think the city of Chicago lacks that. Now, I'm not saying all over. I think there's a lot of areas where you still have that, and I think there's certain areas of the city of Chicago that are trying to improve on it by community groups, community parties, community organizations. And I think hopefully there'll be more strides towards getting back that neighborhood type system. I think Chicago, and I'm sure other cities in the city of Chicago, have always been known for having that down-to-earth, neighborhood type community feeling. I lived in, and we're getting away from it. I lived in Lincoln Park when I was going, when I first became a lawyer. And of course, you didn't know the person 2 or 3 houses away from you. They're a young professional. They may have been a student or someone, but you don't get to know them like you did in the community that you grew up in. That I think needs to be improved because I think, like I indicated, you get a much more of a sense of a family when you have an extended family when you come from a neighborhood.
How do the prejudices play themselves out these days? I mean, if it's not 2 different ethnic groups from across one clear border of a street, of which you cross the street and you're in a different neighborhood, that may still exist to a certain extent, but how do prejudices play themselves out?
I think as people become more educated, I don't think the prejudices manifest themselves as much as they used to. I think through education, through awareness and from things on TV, certain issues are raised in TV shows, which they never were raised when I was a young boy, regarding prejudices and biases. I don't think that those prejudices, again, manifest themselves as much as they used to. I think overall people are less prejudiced and less biased than they were years ago. People are much more tolerant of having a minority family live across the street from them than they would 20 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago. Today, communities are mixed. That is good in regards to getting rid of prejudices and biases, but I think that lessens the chance of those people intermingling, and maybe I'm wrong, and I could clearly be wrong, becoming more of a family unit. Because in the neighborhood I grew up in, everybody was basically Eastern European. You had a certain, and they were Catholic. So you had this sense of being, the church was something that bound your community or your neighborhood. Your ethnicity bound, somehow formed some bounds, not bounds, you were bound because of your ethnic background.
Bonds.
Can't even talk, sorry, bonds. These days, with people being all mixed in, there's a better chance of people not communicating. Okay, I'm tolerant of the fact that a black family lives 2 doors away from me, or an Oriental family lives, across the street from me, or a Hispanic family lives, down the street from me. But I think it's harder, and hopefully that'll change too. It is harder for people to find the bonds to form a neighborhood, um, and a community that people could work together in. I don't know if you kind of see where I'm going with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's people are autonomous now. They live their lives. They go to work, and they go do things elsewhere in other parts of the city of Chicago. I still love the city of Chicago. I work down here. I come down here as much as I can. I bring my kids down here. My kids are young, but
what do you bring them to?
Sporting events. If I can, I bring them to street fairs. Chicago has always been known for having the best street and community fairs in the summertime than almost any city. I've had friends from the East Coast, from Boston, from New York, love the city of Chicago because during the summer, every weekend, there's some community or street fair going on, which is a lot of fun. I like to bring my kids to that because they get to see a lot of different things. I'm white. My street is basically a street of white, Anglo-Saxon. I don't know what nationality most of the people are. White, Anglo, they all look like white Anglo-Saxons. I don't want my kids to when they meet a black person, and they don't because they've been lucky enough to meet a lot of different people, that they treat everybody like they should, like they're a human being, not like you're black, you're white, you're Oriental. No, and I've noticed that in my children. My children right now are 4, 3, and 22 months, and only once did one of my kids say something about the black man. But other times when they've met people and they've talked about him, they didn't reference the color of the person's skin or their ethnicity, which I was proud of. I try to get them down here rather than taking them to a store up in the suburbs to see Santa Claus. I brought them here at the Daily Center to see Santa Claus, and they have like a Christmas fair and like a Christmas village set up because in the Daily Center there's all different type of people, and took them to see the windows along Marshall Fields. Take them to street fairs where they get to see and meet a lot of different type of people. They don't get to see everybody that is just like them. In fact, my son, we were driving through the city of Chicago, and again, I guess I'm pretty proud of that, is that the fact that he saw someone, and this man was sitting on the side with a bunch of bags, and he asked, "Where is he going?" And I think my wife said, "Well, that's all his stuff." He goes, "Well, where does he live?" "Well, he doesn't have a house." And you try to explain that to a 4-year-old is difficult. But lo and behold, when I came home either that night or the next day, my 2 little ones came to me and said, "We saw a man who doesn't have a house." And he said, "Daddy, you work. You got to go to work and make money so we can buy this man a house." And because from their perspective, everybody's supposed to have, a nice, comfortable house. Yet at an early age, they learned that everybody doesn't have a house, and they felt, however they came to this conclusion, that we're supposed to provide to make sure that this man does have a house. Which, again, I thought was admirable, how they came to that conclusion. They had a house, everyone else should have a house. Daddy works, Daddy should go make sure this man has a house.
What was your perception as a child of police in your neighborhood and in the city, and what do you think your children's perception is if they're old enough to have one?
My perception was, and I'll never forget this because my dad told me a story once, that he got caught when he was a young boy jumping a fence in a Park District pool or something at night by the police. And he said they smacked him upside the head and kicked him in the ass and then took him home, and he complained to his mom, and she says, "Well, where were you?" And he told her where he was, and she goes, "Well, you're not supposed to be there." And he got another slap upside the head and another kick in the ass. And he always thought that was okay. Now, when I got into business of police brutality, he used to argue with me because his perception was, if they got hit upside the head, they might have deserved it. I think his perception changed with some of the stories that I told him about some of the abuses that occurred. My children's perception of the police are a good one, that they're to correct wrongs. They'll ask me, Daddy, you have your seatbelt on, or you're going too fast. It's illegal. That the policeman's going to take you and lock you up because it's illegal. That's not legal. I don't know if they know what the term legal is, but they know it's a wrong. And they believe, from the little that I can see, that a policemen are there to make sure we don't do wrong. And I think that's the proper perception. That police officers are to make sure that we don't do things wrong.
In reality, what can you tell me about police in Chicago in the year 2000? From a variety of perspectives. I mean, I'm not just saying from poor communities who deal with the police more.
I always say that 90% or more than 90% of the Chicago Police Department are hardworking individuals who have a tough job and earn their salary and are out there really trying to do the right thing. There are some officers which I encounter and have encountered abuse their badge.
What are the most common ways in which they abuse it?
I have a badge, I can do what I want. You want to give me a lip? Fine. You get to spend the night in jail. That's the most common. In fact, I personally was arrested one time.
For what?
Disorderly conduct. When I went up to a police wagon there was a party in my younger days, and the party got a little loud. And the police had to come back, and then somebody lost their temper. One of the police officers lost their temper and said, fine, just start taking people in. They emptied the party and said everybody out, and indiscriminately they would grab people and said, you're under arrest, you go, you're under arrest. And literally they were taking a bunch of girls into a paddy wagon. And these girls, believe me, one of them doesn't even drink. They were not drunk, they were not being disorderly. I went up to the policewoman and said, excuse me, and believe me, I was sober as I can be. And I said, excuse me, you're not going to arrest the girls, are you? And she said to me, well, you're not coming in this wagon. I said, I don't intend on it, but I don't believe you're going to arrest these girls. She looked at me and looked at a police officer and said, take them in. On a whim. Why? Because she was a policewoman. She had a badge. She can do it. That's the very common abuse. And even another very common abuse is guys that have criminal backgrounds. Rather than following the rules and arresting people when in fact they do wrong, the police bend the rules. I see Joe Smith. Joe Smith, I know we arrested him 6 months ago for drugs. Let's just stop him. Well, stop him for what? Because he's walking down the street. Search him. Joe Smith may be going to the store and doing absolutely nothing wrong and not have any drugs. Maybe he did. Maybe he does. And they arrest him for drugs. Well, that's an unlawful search. They bent the rules to try and stop Joe from either using drugs or dealing drugs. That's wrong under the law. But if in fact he didn't have drugs and he was just going to the store, his rights were abused because he was stopped, searched, and hassled. And maybe Joe doesn't like the fact that he's stopped, searched, and hassled. So he says something. And what happens then is sometimes things can escalate. And words go back and forth. Well, then you're going to jail. Well, no, I'm not. You're going to jail. And then things can escalate more. Somebody loses their temper. Maybe it's Joe Smith. Or maybe it's a police officer. And I've seen things escalate over something so simple and so trivial. And all of a sudden someone's got a cracked open head and lands up spending the night in jail and may not have even touched a police officer, but all of a sudden now gets charged with disorderly, and the police officer needs to cover his ass. So he's got to charge the guy. Well, I wouldn't hit the guy unless he hit me, so now he has to charge him with battery and either resisting arrest or assault to cover the actions that the police officer took because the police officer lost his cool. Very often it starts from something trivial and escalates to something large. And I get involved anywhere on any one of those fact patterns. But trying to think what other common abuses that you can see, that you'll see is, I have police officers steal things. Why? Because they got a badge. Who's going to check? We caught police officers stealing money. Caught police officers stealing items from people. I filed an action one time where a police officer stole some jewelry from someone. Why? Because they figure they can get away with it, because the badge they believe the badge shields them from getting caught, and sometimes it does. It's sad to see that happens, but it still does out there. Police officers are still police officers on the take. There's still police officers stealing. There's still bad police officers. There's police officers getting indicted every year. But I truly believe that for the most part, the normal person that you're going to see in that blue uniform in the city of Chicago, I like to think, and here's a guy who sues police officers every day. I truly like to believe that the Chicago police officers and police officers in most communities, you would like to believe, are good people. But unfortunately, there are some bad ones. And I happen to, my area of the law is I happen to make money off of the bad ones.
Before we started talking on tape, you said that you used to defend police officers, and now you defend defendants.
Now I sue police officers. Yeah, I used to defend police officers, and I used to see some unbelievable things happen. And as a lawyer, and I can't comment on specifics, but I've had police officers almost admit to me that things happen out on the street. And they go, Greg, things happen. Yeah, I did this, or I hit a guy. Now, they're never going to tell me, they probably would never admit that they stole something, but I've had police officers admit to me that they just lost their cool, and they beat the crap out of someone. Maybe they've told me that, maybe they took one or two, couple extra swings at someone when they shouldn't have. I don't see that I'm representing, like, I don't perceive myself as, like years ago, representing the bad guys and now representing the good guys. I perceive myself as, when I represented police officers, I did my job, and I represented them, and sometimes the officers I represented did nothing wrong. Sometimes I represented people that did something wrong, but my job was to represent them and make sure they got a fair trial. Just as today, I sue police officers on behalf of people that make claims. Very often, I don't take a claim unless I believe that there's a wrong. But sometimes, during the process, I learn that my client's story may not be quite what I initially thought it was. And their credibility may be a little less with me. My job is to prosecute the claim to the best of my ability. Sometimes I'm sure I've had people come in here and totally make up things. If I find out about that very quickly, I dump the client, because I'm not going to push forward on some fraud. But I don't perceive myself as, like I indicated, representing the good guys or the bad guys. Right now, I'm representing clients who are abused. Just as when I represented police officers, I was representing police officers who were accused of abuse. Where does that leave us? I don't know. Today, the cases now, they happen every day. People don't hear about them unless it's some unusual fact pattern. With all due respect to the Chicago Police Department, they're still out there kicking ass every day, abusing people every day. And that's not me passing judgment on the city of Chicago or the police department. It's just, it happens. I like to believe, and I tell my clients that I've got a pretty good perspective on things because I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. I've had a police officer take my head off almost. Lost his cool. Thank God he had some restraint, and he didn't. And I've been arrested. I've spent the night in jail. I've seen, and it wasn't that unpleasant. I mean, it wasn't a pleasant experience, but it wasn't, I spent the night in jail, got released, and charges ultimately got thrown out. But I see the abuses. I've dealt with police officers. I've dealt with people in the city of Chicago my whole life since I've been born and raised here. So, I mean, I think the city of Chicago is moving in the right direction from my perspective. Again, most of the things I talked about was my practice of law in this area. I've been lucky enough to make a good living off of abuses that are committed by Chicago police officers or Cook County sheriffs or other law enforcement. I'm lucky enough to have been able to, I don't want to say leave the community I was raised in, but I'm in a much higher economic strata than I was, 25 years ago. I like to think that what I've accomplished is I've given my family some economic, what's the word I'm looking for? I make a good living so I can support my family in a somewhat comfortable position. And in my heart, I truly like to believe, as a person who was born in the city of Chicago, raised in the city of Chicago, and lived in the city of Chicago for a good portion of my life, I've given something back to the city of Chicago by helping the citizens and the police officers. Because I was a public servant. I worked for the city of Chicago. So I've helped the police officers, I've helped the city of Chicago when people were making fraudulent claims, or even helping weed out bad police officers when I worked for the city of Chicago. Or now, as I as I bring lawsuits against the city of Chicago and its police department, I like to believe that I've given something to the citizens of the city because I'm helping people that need help. It's not the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, the bond trader, the CEO of some corporation that gets his ass kicked on the streets of the city of Chicago. Very often it's the people that are abused by law enforcement, or the people where it is the ability is there to abuse these people and get away with it. And through my career, I've been able to help those people, and they're basically able to stand up and say, this shouldn't happen to me. And thank God, I got Gregory Kulis to kind of help me out.
What's important to you in life?
Satisfaction in the things I do. I learned a long time ago that if you chase, and I do okay, if you chase a dollar bill, you're never going to catch it. If you do what you're supposed to do, success will come to you. And if you do the right thing, success will come to you. If you like what you do, success very often will come to you. Maybe not, but it will. I get a lot of self-satisfaction out of my job. I have my own practice. I know a lot of the lawyers that constantly complain about being lawyers, constantly complain about some of the work they do. They're not happy. They're doing this, they're doing the same thing over and over. I have the luxury of running my own business. I started my own business from scratch with no help from anyone. And I have the luxury of running my own business, choosing the cases I want to handle, choosing my clients, because I have a commercial business also. I represent some small and medium-sized businesses. And I get satisfaction out of my job. I like the varied practice that I have. I have a variety of clients, and other than the police brutality, I have a variety of things I work on. And I enjoy that. I think if you're not, we spend so much time working, however many hours a day, 8, 10, 12 hours or more a day in our jobs. If we don't get satisfaction out of that, then we're not getting satisfaction out of a good portion of our life.
How do your clients find you?
Well, again, we're speaking of, I guess, my civil rights clients find me through other attorneys, a lot of times criminal defense attorneys, and my best advertisement are my clients. I've had people call me, and I always ask, where did you get my name? Someone will say, well, somebody from this newspaper gave me your name. Or somebody once told me, I was in the emergency room with my son who got beat on. And there was another woman sitting in the emergency room for I don't know what, and she said, we started talking, and she asked, what happened to your son? And I said, well, the police, beat him up. And she starts rummaging through her purse and pulls out this business card and said, call this man. He's a good man and he'll take care of you.
How do you feel about the stereotypes of what lawyers represent in our country, either from the perspective of what just happened with the presidential election, or from the perspective of that they're money hungry, that they're yuppies, that they're this, they're that, but they don't enjoy a very positive image in the larger society? How does that make you feel?
I probably join in that sentiment to a certain degree, because very often, you know, lawyers have an unbelievable luxury. They get to march in a courtroom and point the finger at someone if they want to file a lawsuit, and do that. I mean, that's a tremendous power that we have. And we can do it on behalf of a little guy, on behalf of a little, or a big guy. Lawyers traditionally have got the stereotype of being money-hungry whores. I don't necessarily agree with that. Overall, I mean, but in a lot of respects, I do agree with it because you see it happening every day. You know, in regards to the election, I voted for Al Gore. I voted for Al Gore. I'm traditionally a Democrat, but I probably have more Republican views now as I get older, and maybe for a lot of different reasons. But because of certain issues between the two candidates, I chose to vote for Al Gore. I hoped that Al Gore was going to win. There came a point, though, that I was absolutely getting sick to my stomach over all this legal process. Florida Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, listening to the arguments and the reasonings, it just, you know, lawyers could create a lot of problems. Or, I mean, you can take a simple contract and you give it to a lawyer, and it becomes a simple contract can become a 20-page contract, a 50-page contract, a simple agreement. You know, you take a certain issue, and lawyers will find a way to pick that issue apart. In regards to the election, it turned my stomach after a point of time. Though I wanted Gore in my heart to win, I'm going, enough. You know, you're going to keep litigating this forever, and thank God Al Gore and the Democratic Party decided that's enough. We'll call it a day. We'll have another day, another election. Whether he won by the popular vote, I don't know. Whether he actually won in Florida, I don't know. But there were certain, I think, viable issues that the lawyers raised, but then it came up to a point where I think they were just beating a dead horse. Is there anything else I can offer you?
Ideas about Chicago as a place? How, you know, where's it fall in our nation right now?
I think Chicago is a fantastic place to live. It is probably, you know, I've never lived anywhere else. I've had the opportunity to travel in other parts of the world and other parts of the country. I would assume that, I think it is a very cosmopolitan type city, a very diverse city. I think there's other cities in Europe that I find equal to Chicago, which I enjoyed very much.
Why are you willing to sacrifice living in the suburbs if the things about the city that strike you as the most important, or not necessarily the most important, but really powerful, and what you believe makes it a great city, and that you valued growing up as a kid, why are you willing to raise your kids in the suburbs?
A couple reasons. Sometimes living in the suburbs is less hassle. For example, getting your kids to school. The schools, the choice of schools, the education. There's probably some better choices. I mean, the public education, Chicago Public School, there's a problem there. The education is probably not as great as it is in suburban America as it is compared to Chicago.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
As a parent of young children, that's school education that you're talking about, elementary school, but what about the education that comes outside of the school, that comes from the surroundings that your children grow up in?
That is invaluable, and that's why I try and instill that with them. Yeah, I agree. I would love to have my kids be able to play in a community where they know the person on the next block, where I played out on the street. Now the problem is, what happens is, since you don't have that community or neighborhood aspect like you used to, and people are much, and maybe I'm wrong, people are much more mobile than they used to be. You didn't have, how do I say this, and this maybe doesn't make any sense, but if a crazy, unusual person went in my neighborhood or start walking through my neighborhood, someone would figure out that he doesn't belong there. and somebody a block away would notice him before he even got to my block. Now in the city of Chicago, you have people who are much more mobile. Everyone has a car. Everyone has access to a car. You'll see someone on your street in the city of Chicago that probably may even live on your street, and you don't even know that person. You don't even recognize that person. There's safety aspects with the children.
But you've identified that as still existing in your suburban block, no?
Yes. And maybe you can stereotype me as thinking that the suburbs are much more safer than the city of Chicago. I like to think that in a certain respect, but I know that's not the case anymore because crime, years ago, the woman walked into a school up in Winnetka and shot a bunch of kids. It doesn't matter where you are. But maybe I think the odds are maybe a little better in the community I live in than in the city of Chicago. There's a lot of other aspects of it. My kids have a larger backyard. They're closer to a park. When I was a little boy, we used to play, what we used to call it? We used to call it like second base or something, where you throw a ball and you pretend you're fielding a ball with your mitt. We used to play like ball in the street. And we'd find a place to play. Traffic is much more congested than it used to be. I mean, people were zooming down, side streets left and right in the city of Chicago, where it wasn't as crowded. I'm probably being a mother hen, thinking my kids are maybe a little more safe. How do I say this? I have a nice backyard. I have some nice trees in the back. It's a little more serene. I can go in the backyard at night, crack open a beer, have a glass of wine, have a cup of coffee, and maybe relax a little quicker than if I was on my back porch in the city of Chicago.
After you sat in traffic and got all stressed out to get home.
I take the train. I don't drive every day. Taking the train, I can relax for half hour on a train, reading something, get off the train, get in my car, and in 2 minutes I'm home. If I drive, you're right. The other day there was a bad snowstorm. It took me 2 hours to get home. I couldn't drive like that every day. I couldn't be that type of commuter. I live in a community where I have that choice. I can drive, and if there's no traffic, last night I was home within a half hour driving. Or I can take the train.
How much does it cost you to take the train now?
It is, where I live in Wilmette, Illinois, which is just, northern suburb, 2 or 3 suburbs north of Chicago. I think it's like 3 something one way on the train.
Every day?
Every day.
How much?
Like $3 and something. But you can buy a pass. You can buy a monthly pass for like $75. So that pass is good for, however many times you want to ride, or you can buy a 10-ride ticket at a reduced price. I think the 10-ride, I can't remember what it is, like $27 or something like that for a 10-ride pass. But I buy a monthly pass because I take the train. I couldn't live in a suburb that I would have to drive, or I'd have to sit on a train for an hour.
How much does it cost you to park your car at the station?
$1, which is reasonable. Which is 4 quarters. I can't park downtown at a meter. It costs me a quarter for 10 minutes. It costs me 4 quarters for the whole day. Parking in the city of Chicago is outrageous. Anywhere from, I have a reduced stamp, for the whole day. It's anywhere from $13 to $20 to park your car for the day. That's a lot of money. I do okay financially. Hey, that's outrageous to park your car. But I live in an area where coming into the city is not that big of a hassle because I don't live way out. I live close enough where it's not that big of a hassle for me to commute in and out. I come in on the weekends. I even like 2 weeks ago, I brought my kids in the morning to see Santa downtown at the Daily Center because the Santa was here. They came to my office because they love to come to my office, turned around, took them home, probably had something to eat with them, stayed home for a little while, came back downtown again to do some work. So I came home twice in one day. If I lived way out, I couldn't do that. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky as to based on where I live, that I have that option, and that's why I live where I live. So I can, because I'm a city person. I love the city of Chicago. I love certain aspects of the city. If I made more money and could put my kids, in the type of home, in the type, that they live in now in the city of Chicago, consider doing that. But I can't afford a 4-bedroom house with a nice backyard with nice trees in a safe, great area and with schools close by in the city of Chicago. There's not a lot of areas that I can do that. So there's a trade-off with all those aspects. Hopefully, as my kids get older, I will always give them the opportunity to come in the city of Chicago, or the city, to view things, to see things, to meet people, to come to neighborhood fairs and see all the different people, to taste all different types of food. I think that's important, and you're right, that education is invaluable. So.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I just hope that as we're, this is, I know this project is called City 2000. I hope in the year 2500 that the city of Chicago, or the year 3000 the city of Chicago is still here, because this is probably, bar none, the greatest city to live in. I've got friends, like I said, that have come from all over the country, that have lived here and have moved back out east, back out to California, back all over the place, but they love coming to Chicago because it is a great community. People are great, people are down to earth, and the people care about the city.
Tell me your name again and where we are.
Greg Kulis. Right now we're at 30 North LaSalle, city of Chicago, at my law office.
Great, thank you, Greg.
Thanks.